Hello and welcome to the Digital PR Podcast, a podcast that will cover the big talking points of the digital PR industry. My name is Steve Baker and this is Louise Parker.
Hello.
We both work at digital marketing agency PropellerNet and we've both been working in digital PR for a long time. Nearly a decade for you, Lou, right?
Yep, that's right.
And over a decade for me now. In the last few years, we've seen the digital PR industry explode, and with that has come a lot of interesting conversations about how the discipline works and where it's going. From creativity to relevance to burnout, this podcast will cover the subjects that everyone is talking about, with the help of some very special guests.
Today we are talking about reactive PR and newsjacking, a staple of traditional PR agencies for decades. In the last few years, the art of quick turnaround stories that are reacting to breaking news or events has become very popular in the digital PR industry too. To discuss how digital PRs can use Reactive to build links and get great coverage, we've got Sophie Rhone on the podcast, who has recently been specialising in reactive PR. Welcome, Sophie.
Hello, thank you for having me.
No worries at all. Thank you for being on.
Yeah, thank you so much for joining us, Sophie. Let's get straight into it. What is newsjacking and reactive PR? What does it mean for you and how do you kind of describe it and explain it?
I think the best way for me to describe it is kind of putting your clients as the expert to kind of sometimes just put the jargon into kind of plain terms. So I think, a lot of finance kind of clients and, mortgages will more than likely simplify breaking news to those that aren't very kind of aware of it or might not understand it. And then you've got kind of, the other side to it where it's kind of pushing out products on the back of kind of trending stories, whether that be Harry Styles wearing a pair of trainers. We can then look at sales and then it creates some headlines where it's like Harry Styles is the reason behind these massive sales. And he's the one that's kind of causing a trend. And then you've got kind of TikTok as well. So, we love to doom scroll on TikTok. I think we're all kind of a little bit guilty of that. I certainly am. But you will see stories like, we did a story around a fake tan bedsheet that was going viral on TikTok. And we identified that our client sold one. And it was simply, we're selling them for £20. And it just went mad. It just went crazy.
Yeah, sometimes it's just the simplicity behind some reactive and kind of like newsjacking stories is always quite surprising. And that's not to do down the story. It's because you've seen a great opportunity. But yeah, just the simplest kind of little link to your brand can do really, really well. I mentioned in the intro how it's becoming a bit more popular to be doing reactive and newsjacking PR in the digital PR kind of SEO PR space.
Yeah.
Do you think more agencies or brands are adopting it? Is that what you're seeing as well? And if so, why? What do you think the benefits are and why people are doing it?
I think, a lot more agencies are kind of going down that route because if you think, a big hero campaign takes sometimes 8 weeks to develop from end to end. And sometimes, as we know in PR, it doesn't always get linked straight away. But I think with reactive, what's really good about it is it's just that quick turnaround. You can test, you can A/B test it. If it doesn't work, you're not at a massive loss with, a campaign. So I think I'm seeing the shift between, campaigns aren't dead. They've got the longevity and they have, the wider outreach opportunities. But I think, people will start kind of adding reactive to their strategies to kind of have, the deliverables of more links, whilst they kind of still kind of carry on with the hero campaigns in the background. They can still kind of deliver those results to the client.
You mentioned A/B testing there. So I just wanted to kind of pick up on that a little bit because I'd be really, really interested, and I think our listeners would as well, about how you actually go about doing that. Do you mean you're literally testing different versions of the story or different headlines and pitches? Because obviously you can do it a lot quicker with reactive, but how do you approach that, Sophie?
I think sometimes, you've just got to take a chance with reactive. 100 other brands might be thinking the same as you. And sometimes it might not actually be that interesting outside of your own brain. I definitely see that sometimes. I'm like, oh my God, I'm so interested in this. I think the whole world will kind of too. And I think it's just simply kind of A/B testing your headlines And you're not doing any harm. You're not at no loss by sending out a press release. And if it doesn't get picked up, it doesn't get picked up, and you can kind of just try again.
Yeah, there's definitely a lot more kind of talk about the pressure that a hero campaign can have, because like you said, of those 8 weeks of production, and that's a lot of kind of cost in terms of the time, but also there might be also extra production costs as well. And because do you find with Reactive, are you ever using extra budget? Are you, or is it only your time that you're basically
not really,
spending on it?
I think a lot of kind of the reactive time is, simple research. You might have a look at some Google search data, Google Trends, and on the odd occasion, if it's really necessary, you will run kind of like a one poll survey. So, in respect to running a big survey, £2,000, you can maybe do an overnight poll just to kind of get people's, opinions on whatever topic you're talking about.
Being able to do it kind of at speed with minimal budget, you can see why it's so appealing to clients in comparison to hero campaigns.
Yeah.
I'd agree with you, Sophie. I think hero campaigns still have their place, will always have their place, but Reactive has intrigued us for a while. We talked about it a lot, ourselves and as an agency. I'm interested in your views on kind of what it needs from a client to make it work effectively. Like, how quick do you need them to be? Like, how do you kind of set it up for success?
I think, just going back to kind of my Brighton talk, it's literally taking them on a journey and having that process. And I think process is the key to having reactive work kind of really well. I think once you've built up that kind of relationship with the client and, they are a little bit wary, they are kind of, not sure if I want to kind of comment on that. And I think, it's just really being open and honest with them. And building out a process. So you have the dedicated sign-off person, you have that dedicated, time frame, and you make them aware that, if they don't stick to that, then, we're potentially going to lose the reactive headline.
How long do you normally give them to, once you've kind of proposed the idea and think it's good for them, how long is that window for them to be able to give sign-off for you to go ahead?
If we are looking at kind of finance announcements, we're looking at a couple of hours. If something's really just breaking, then if, you're going down the more pop culture kind of route or seasonality. So if you want to do a piece on an up and coming storm, I think you have that kind of bit of longevity in doing a couple of days at the very max. I always kind of aim to get within 24 hours. But we did some guides around Halloween recently. And I think, we knew we wanted to do that. So ahead of time, we were able to kind of pitch the client and make sure that we had that sign off in time.
So that's like, I'm again intrigued at like all of that, but like one part specifically I want to pick up on is the idea itself. Like, how do you come up with, because it's got to like relate to something that's kind of happening right now, whereas like a hero campaign can be something a little bit more about the brand or something a little bit more, what's the word? I was going to use the word tenuous. It's not the word. Lateral, like a little bit more lateral thinking. But like, how do you actually come up with the ideas? You're obviously used to working really quickly, but like, are you just constantly kind of switched on to what's happening? Do you have alerts? Like, and how do you find that? How do you do it?
So for me, I think there's two kind of directions to go in. I think there's seasonality. So that Christmas is coming up, that Halloween's coming up and bonfire night and all these kind of, kind of days and seasons are always going to be there. So in my opinion here, you can plan your reactive, right? And then, I think a lot of people are like, we monitor the news. I find it really hard to monitor news because it's so big. Like, I could have a finance client, a motoring client. I can't consume all that news. So I use RSS feeds and I will create them to whichever industry I'm kind of looking at. So, for example, I use a kind of, I think it's called RSS OWL. And essentially that will let me kind of filter and put in folders each niche and certain keyword words on Google News.
That's so interesting. I've never heard that before. That's great.
like it will change your reaction. Like you don't have to consume the news will kind of deliver it to you. Because I think, another thing, just touching on it is burnout in our industry. And I think with Reactive, you are so consumed to all these negative stories, cost of living, electricity bills, and actually we are human. But, I think the easiest way is instead of keep doom scrolling, just have your RSS feed set up with kind of, keywords that that we can either comment on or that will be of interest to clients, which will then kind of just take a bit of pressure off, yourself that's doing reactive PR, but also to just kind of have it as soon as it breaks.
Yeah, that's such a good tip because I've genuinely not thought about it that way. I did the doom scrolling thing, and that's why I found it difficult because something I talk to my wife quite a lot about. It's like, she's like, oh, if the news kind of upsets you, then just don't read it. It's like, no, I kind of have to, like every single day for my job. So
kind of my job.
Yeah, but having the RSS feeds and being able to sort of, do you say you do it by industry as well? So you've got like automotive or finance, so you can kind of break it down and dip into as you want. Is that right?
Exactly. Yeah. Same with kind of, Twitter's different. You're just going to have to look at your trending kind of stories anyway. But just by having those folders up, automotive, finance, cost of living, it just really does make it easier.
In your experience, are there, because we're talking a little bit about sectors there, but are there, and you've mentioned finance and like automotive, but are there particular sectors that you think reactive PR and newsjacking like works particularly well for, or vice versa? Are there like industries that you found kind of tough to crack or would just be like a little bit more wary of trying a reactive approach on?
I think travel definitely has its kind of challenges, in my opinion. I think, it's an area where, if you're an airline, you can't comment on the airline problems, right? Mm-hmm. And it's kind of like, okay, who can comment on that? So I think it's just kind of a day-by-day case as well. Sometimes an industry that we didn't think would work great, but I suppose it depends on what's happening on that certain day.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I find it tricky to sort of, because obviously some clients are going to be more risk averse than others, so they just won't want to comment on certain things, and other industries just seem kind of more ripe for it, I suppose, where they're like, okay, yeah, we can offer this kind of comment, and there's always stuff happening. So it's really interesting to get your take on it, because I've often kind of mused on that, I suppose.
Do you see examples of maybe brands getting involved with conversations where they maybe shouldn't do just because there's a reactive opportunity? Is that like maybe a common mistake that you see, or are there any other things that you see kind of happening where you're like, oh, I'm not sure I would do it quite like that?
Yeah. No, not really. If I'm honest, I think everything I've seen maybe, has a place because it's probably been covered. I think, we will never know those brands because, they're not being covered unless we're the journalists getting the kind of...
the tweet happens.
Press release. Of course, you see journalists like tweeting stuff and you're like, oh no. And you just want the world to kind of like cave in on you. But I think, I think it was someone done like around on Twitter. But I think what's really good is smaller agencies can do it on behalf of themselves. Mm. So I think, I think it was Ferry and his agency that commented on the Elon Musk Twitter searches for people deleting Twitter. And I thought that was really good. It's easy. He done it in like 20 minutes. But yeah, I think I've had the conversations with clients, especially when the Queen died. They, was coming to us and saying, is there anything we can do? And I was like, look, just back off.
Oh, really?
I think you should just be quiet.
Oh.
Yeah.
I was going to say, no, I completely agree with that, because I think I did some... It was a comment. We got asked for a little bit of comment, didn't we, from like Marketing Week or PR Week about should brands be responding to the Queen's death? And I was like, well, it's got to be kind of, well, probably not. If you're asking the question, then probably not, unless it's like super relevant. But you could see the tweets from brands. It was like Poundland sort of said, oh, here's our take on it. And do you think there's like a danger of brands sort of jumping on the bandwagon with reactive PR and newsjacking,
Absolutely.
thinking, I've got to do it, so therefore we'll do it come what may, and we'll just sort of like fudge it and make it work. And then they're just trying to comment on everything. Do you think there's a risk of that?
Absolutely. I think as brand, you've really got to think about, are you funny for a start? And I think Audi do it really well. Ryanair have done it really well, but they've done it really bad as well. I've seen a couple of their tweets. I'm like, oh God, no. And I think, you know what? You've just got to look at the bigger picture. You've really got to sit down with your strategy team and think, should we do this? And kind of weigh up the pros and cons.
Yeah.
You mentioned a little bit earlier about burnout and how if you're doing reactive and newsjacking, you kind of, it's a lot of pressure to be making sure you're not missing anything. Do you think there are times when, it's okay to let a story go because you just might not have the time or you're busy with other things at work? Like how do you reconcile that with thinking, oh, this would be really cool for my brand, but actually I've got a million other things to do this week. I don't know if I can fit it in, and then, you lose that opportunity?
I think it's okay. I think it's absolutely fine. There's been, a number of times where, I've just been so busy and thinking, I would be really good, but actually I need to put myself first. And I think, where this will come into, a little bit of problematic kind of thinking is, big agencies that don't actually necessarily realise how much you are consuming the news in reactive and how much, that could have an impact on, one's mental health. I think it was at the start of COVID, we thought like we had so much pressure. And then we were like, oh God, and we're just consuming all this news. We don't actually have time to switch off. So I think it's absolutely fine to just kind of put yourself first and think, you know what, this is causing me more stress. I just need to let go.
Yeah.
Yeah, no link is worth that, really. If you really think about it, there'll be other opportunities. It's fine. But yeah, I think it's quite hard often in PR as well, because it's quite a well-known fact that especially certain publications love bad news. They don't want the good news, they want the bad stuff, because that's the stuff that gets clicked, that's the stuff that gets shared. And I think there is a point with us where it's like you could just churn out a load of really negative, horrible news, and you probably will get coverage, you probably will get links, but like, do you want to put that out there? Like, is that going to make you feel good? Is that going to make other people feel good? I think there's an element of like thinking about what you put into the news cycle as well, which I think more and more people are considering as well.
I learned the hard way with that one in the start of COVID. We didn't really know what COVID was. And it was like, oh, I can get a link by saying, COVID's on your steering wheel. And actually, the link was good in that. But as time kind of went on, I thought, I'm actually contributing to scaremongering people now, which isn't fair. And I can see, the impact this could be having on people as kind of readers that don't understand PR. And, they might just see a headline and think, oh my God, what? So I think, it's definitely kind of looking at an opportunity now and valuing whether you are going to affect people negatively.
Yeah, for sure. I think COVID's been mentioned a couple of times. I was going to ask, like, how much of a part do you think COVID has played, like the last couple of years, which in so many ways feels like a bad dream, like really sort of really odd to sort of think
now
that.
We see Matt Hancock on I'm Slip.
Yeah, I mean the world's not real anymore, is it? Let's be honest. But like, how much of a part do you think COVID has played in the acceleration of the popularity of reactive PR and newsjacking, particularly with regards to digital PR? Because I think, Lou, in your intro, you mentioned it's all, it's been around for a while, used by traditional agencies and increasingly by digital. But like, how much of a part do you think COVID's played in the acceleration of that?
I think, we personally at the time of COVID, we had all these campaigns that were no longer kind of useful, traveling and office working, for example, but we still had to kind of deliver results to our clients. And that's when we were kind of like, okay, should we just try this? We don't have 8 weeks. We've got to deliver this within, a couple of weeks. Let's try kind of commenting on it. And I think when I asked, journalists, I surveyed journalists and I asked them what they wanted at the time. They wanted helpful guides and, comments and stuff like that. So it was kind of like, grouping all the clients that weren't actively having any campaigns out at the minute and seeing what they had to offer. You know, what could they comment on? You know, do you have this spokesperson in mind? And kind of, you know, basically doing a new strategy for this group of clients that we no longer could service during the lockdown time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's like the ultimate pivot, wasn't it? And sort of a real test of all of our kind of like flexible approaches. Because I remember, you know, me and you had a chat, Lou. It's like, what do we actually do? We don't know what we're doing because we've never been in this situation before. Journalists don't know what they're doing. Clients don't know what they're doing. So finding that route, and I completely agree. I think it has accelerated it a lot, like the way we have to work with journalists. We've said campaigns still play a part, and they do. But yeah, reactive seems to be not just a nice to have, kind of integral to most approaches. So,
yeah. I mean, there's just so many examples of it doing so well. So it's hard to argue with it when you can see these great results. Do you think that maybe in the future, or maybe now, there is an argument to just do reactive, no campaigns?
No, I think, you know, campaigns are always going to be good for, you know, having ownership from clients in certain industries. So reports, you know, interactivity, and really kind of crunching down big data sets because they're always interesting. Do I think that there's certain kind of campaign areas that have died? Yeah, of course. Like, you know, we went from kind of doing really fun big survey pieces that will probably not be as popular anymore because you can do an overnight poll that can tell the same story for less amount of money, basically. So I think, yeah, campaigns definitely do have a place, but I think they've really got to be standout campaigns.
Do you find, because obviously we work in digital PR, I think all of our fairly recent backgrounds are from kind of SEO. So we're doing it for one part of it is doing it for the link, which is hopefully going to help your SEO and your rankings. Do you find that the links that you get from Reactive differ from a campaign, or are they a particular type of link? Like, do you find you get more no follows or affiliates or anything like that? What's your experience with the link side?
I think product reactive. So if I'm pushing out a product that's gone viral, I think I've done some kind of dog denim jackets and
Haven't we all?
different product offerings, and I know. So I feel like they are a lot of affiliate kind of links when you're going down the product route. You know, when you're going on to comment, I suppose it differs by industry. We know that, you know, more regional content is going to get us no follow links. But, you know, when we go into the niche side, so technology and kind of, you know, finance, we do see a bit of a mix. I think it's the same with campaigns, but, you know, when you're doing product stuff, most of the time it is affiliate.
Yeah, I often find, at least at the moment, at time of recording, when it comes to affiliates and products, I find the UK is so much worse for affiliates, if you're considering them to be bad, than like other countries. And I don't know what it is. I guess, I don't know if our, you know, those kind of publishing networks are really suffering and need to be making more money, which is totally understandable. But I just definitely find like, that, you know, kind of the Hearsts of the UK, it's just blanket affiliates, which does, you know, it's tricky when you have your clients.
You literally get so excited when you see that link. And it says Skims and you're like, no. And you just want to throw it out the window. You know, I think, I've seen it a lot. And I think I've seen it on sites, you know, that I would think didn't. And I was like, oh my God, what? This got to be wrong. It's got to be a technical glitch. But yeah, and I think that's the thing, you know, you can venture out to the US with Reactive, you know, and European kind of countries that we see have a bigger follow link kind of background.
Yeah. Do you plan for that a lot? Like, so you plan a reactive story knowing that it's going to work for kind of international outreach, or does it very much depend on the story? So I'm guessing if it's like you're responding to, I don't know, like I'm a Celebrity or something like that, it's going to be quite UK specific because it's so unique to us. But like, what's the balance in terms of international and UK for you?
Balance is, I think, UK specific is going to be finance, you know, the housing market and stuff like that, because that is so different with other countries. But I think when you look at pop culture, you know, for example, say I'm a Celebrity, there was an Australian contestant we know that Australian news would be covering them because they are from Australia, basically. So I think it's how you look at your kind of outreach strategy with Reactive. If it's Harry Styles, the US love Harry Styles, the world love Harry Styles. Like, you can't not like the guy. So I think, it depends on a case by case basis. But I think, more of the, government, housing market and finance would be just generic to UK. But there's always kind of a different angle.
Yeah, that makes sense. But you've led me on to sort of, I was just starting to think, like, who doesn't like Harry Styles and why? That's quite a big question. Maybe a campaign in that, some search data, like why would you not like him?
He must be like the most loved person on this world, like on this earth.
Yeah, that is a good campaign.
He's got, actually, yeah. Let's not give away the goal. We can always cut this bit out, but I'm going to note down who is the most loved person on this earth and loathed. So we talked a lot about like the best approaches and how you approach it, and you've given some amazing insights and tips. But what do you think are the most kind of common mistakes made by either brands and clients or by freelancers, in-house teams when approaching like reactive PR and newsjacking? Is it mainly about like the lack of speed? Is it responding to the wrong things? But like what have you seen that you kind of dislike?
I think it's when you are basically doing advertising. You're trying to be reactive, but you're not. You're just trying to sell your product. There's no kind of link to the story, or you're trying to comment on something that's quite sensitive. And I think some brands can be tone deaf with what's going on. And I think you've really got to just take that 1 minute to think, is this worth it? Am I going to upset people, or am I going to be helpful? I think the biggest mistake is kind of not thinking about your comment.
Have you got any examples of great reactive PR that either you've done yourself or that you've seen that you thought was, oh, I wish I'd done that?
Do you know what? I loved it's what always stick with me is like the Squid Games.
Oh, yeah.
When I think it was Rise at 7 done the white vans and it just kind of went everywhere. And I was like, what? I think that was really cool. I think you guys do a lot of reactive at PropellerNet that, I always see and I'm like, oh my God, why didn't I think of that? There's just so many brands doing it now. And I think sometimes they do it without knowing it's reactive.
Oh yeah, go on.
So, for example, like, it could be a tweet. It could be, just kind of putting something out there at the time. And I don't think their PR team actually realised. I think it was Ocado that did it more recently around the dog Christmas pudding. And I was like, you do realise that's a really good campaign and, you should be doing something about that. And I think, if people have all these product offerings, you can be so reactive with it.
So is that they had that product and they were just selling it and it's actually a really good, PRable product?
And then they tweeted it and then people go mad on the tweets and start tagging everyone in it. I think, that sometimes people don't actually realise that they probably have a really golden product that can get you headlines and links.
So how do you think, because I totally agree, and that's a really interesting example. And just to clarify, it's Christmas puddings for dogs, right? Is that I think I missed, okay. Dog Christmas, it's a good one. But like, how do you think that's missed? So do you think it's on the PR team to be sifting through product and connecting with the sort of the brand team, the social team, whether that's in-house or a client? Or do you think that's kind of a bit of both? So it needs to be pointed out to PR? Because obviously we got a lot on our plates. What would be the ideal kind of setup at a client to get that done properly, do you think?
I think for me, I've always kind of looked, if I've been given a client for reactive, I will look at everything they offer. And I think sometimes it's that simple. People don't think of it. And I honestly just do think that's the main reason that, maybe in-house PR teams are like, oh, well, I didn't really think of that because it's just what I see every day.
Yeah.
Like, why is that of interest? You know what I mean?
Yeah, it's like so sort of second nature, so ingrained what they offer. They sort of lose
It's
sight
that
of
much
what's
in your
interesting.
face, you don't realise it. Yeah.
Yeah.
You literally, it's there staring you in the face. And, you know, people do miss it.
I think that's another great tip, that kind of that starting point. I think we do it quite a lot. You know, you do like the brand immersion and you do like, you know, you think you get the information about the client, but just having your own kind of sift through absolutely everything they offer and noting down what you think are the most interesting things, because it might differ from what the client thinks as well. You know, when clients are like, oh, we got to push this product or this thing, and you're like, actually, that's not the most interesting thing you do. We can make more of, well, dog Christmas puddings or whatever that might be.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Even existing content on their blogs.
Yes.
Like, you know, it's simple tips and stuff like that, especially, you know, cost of living. And I think, you know, brands will have stuff on food waste, you know, how to, you know, cut down food waste at Christmas. I think you've literally got it there. You have it there. Just add either some search volume around it, you know, add something if you need it, but actually just take that, you know, the risk that's going to cost you nothing to offer it out. And you'll find that, you know, everything's sat there already. And you've just got to kind of craft your headlines.
I think that's such a great opportunity, especially if you have maybe a trickier in-house PR team who sometimes, you know, might be really adverse to you coming up with your own complete campaign or something brand new. It's quite hard to argue with when you say, hey, there's something that literally is already published on this brand's website. Could we just use that? Like, obviously, you've got the next hurdle of, can I then talk to journalists? Sometimes in-house PR teams don't like that. But at least you've got that first bit done where you're like, look, you've already published it, so you can't have an issue with it because it's already live. So that's quite a nice way of kind of, if you are finding it trickier with an in-house PR team.
And that's part of the process that I spoke about earlier. You know, you will have clients that are like, oh my God, we really want to do reactive. And then you'll get, you know, maybe an in-house PR at that same client that like, no, you're not doing that. So then you're like, well, hold up a minute. How about I help you out? Okay, so we've identified this. I know you're really busy with kind of press office and, you know, all the announcements from your company. So would really love to help you out and kind of just outreach this existing stuff. You know, we will, you know, I'm always like, you know, look, if you don't want us to contact certain people, we won't do it. That's absolutely fine. Like, and I think, you know, some people can be, you know, very protective of their contacts, which is understandable. Like, if you've got a really good contact with that person as a brand, you don't want, you know, an SEO agency kind of sending them stuff out. So I completely get it. But then just look at the different niches that go, you know, around the nationals. We don't need to contact the nationals. Like, they don't give us follow links anyway. But, you know, we can go to the niches. We can go to the food sites and stuff like that.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's such a measured way of thinking about it, because we have had, you know, that battle is real, isn't it, with PR teams, and it kind of makes sense on both sides. There's the frustration when you're like, oh, why can't we just do what we want to do? But actually thinking about ways you can help them is, again, another great example of how digital PRs can work with in-house teams and other agencies, and say, oh, we can work together and do this thing that.
Yeah, it's that reverse psychology.
Lovely. I like, yeah, that's a good way of thinking about it. This is quite a big question, because we're asking you to sort of look ahead into the future. And I mean, particularly after the last couple of years, who knows what's going to happen. But where do you think reactive PR and newsjacking is heading in the future? How do you think it might change?
I think, you know, brands will be doing a lot of planned reactive, you know, in the future, you know, based on seasonality and bits like that. But I think, you know, people are just going to be a bit more self-aware of the simple tactics that they can use. You know, people are going to be looking at their client offering, thinking, oh, well, you know, this isn't going to cost me anything. Maybe I should just ask this journalist if they want this comment. And I think, you know, it will definitely be ingrained in a lot of PR strategies going forward. You know, maybe as part of a bigger retainer, as a bit of a different offering. I do think that, you know, PR campaigns aren't dead, and they never will be dead. I just think we as an industry, you know, we rinse and repeat, don't we? We see someone else do something really good and we're like, oh my God, we can do that, but we'll do it, different topic. And I think that's what's going to change. You're not going to see that kind of rinse and repeat anymore. You're just going to be seeing a lot of brands comment in on day-to-day stuff.
Do you think we'll see agencies specialising purely in reactive PR and newsjacking? I mean, I guess there's agencies that excel at it and digital PRs or PR people that excel at it, but do you think we'll get like proper specialist agencies to say, you can go to other agencies for campaigns, but we just do this and we do it really well? Do you think we'll see a bit of that?
Yeah, absolutely. I think there will be agencies that have struggled, in bigger campaign stuff, but, excel at reactive PR. Their clients might not work. It might not work for their clients. Campaigns might not work for their clients. They might be a massive established brand that have to go through 100 loopholes to get a hero campaign signed off. However, they might just have existing products that you can kind of, utilize and say, we'll do this, and we do it well.
Yeah. When you see reactive PR done well, what do you think are the biggest benefits of it? Like if you had to sell it to someone, how are you going to convince them? What are the biggest pros?
You put your client in the center of a huge conversation. I think that is, the main benefit for reactive PR. Because you're getting a reach of people that are consuming that news right now. Whereas, hero campaigns, it is niche. You have a smaller pool of audience and you have to build that over time. Whereas, if you're commenting on something that's gone viral on TikTok, you're going to be reaching an audience that you probably wouldn't have reached in a hero campaign, like 18-year-olds on TikTok around fake tan kind of, bed sheets isn't going to be the same that you would, potentially target in food waste campaigns, and stuff like that. So I think it's just a better way to reach a larger audience.
So our final question for you, Sophie, is what do you want to see more of in the digital PR industry, and vice versa? What do you want to see less of? Obviously, it doesn't have to be around newsjacking and reactive PR, which we've talked about extensively in this episode. But yeah, what do you want to see more and less of?
I want to see more creative thinking. And I know that's really kind of, difficult to do in our industry, but I think it's been quite turbulent in the PR industry over the last 10 years that I've been in it, especially. I think, I started out when it was infographics and then, tips and guides. And then we went on to the really cool stuff like the rendering and, the big data sets that were fun to kind of use. But then we went into surveys. And I think we see a lot of surveys now. And I think it maybe falls on workload being one. I think, some PR managers are so stretched, they can't be creative. They have that kind of churn out mindset. Okay, right, we'll do a survey on this and churn it out. What I want to see is that big creative thinking, like, when you see a brand that kind of sticks out. So, I think more recently, Neoman done the children books. I think it was internet safety?
Yes. Yeah.
I love it. I thought that is the stuff that I literally just want to see, that big standout creative stuff. So yeah, I'd really love us to kind of go back to that big creative thinking.
And what about anything?
Especially with cross-channel stuff? I think social media as well. That's our kind of opportunity to be big and creative.
Well, that's a very inspirational message to end the episode. So thank you very much, Sophie, for your time. It's been an absolute pleasure to chat to you about all things reactive and newsjacking and the digital PR world.
Thank you for having me.
Do you want to shout out your Twitter, Sophie, so people can get in touch with you if they have any other reactive questions or queries?
Yeah, absolutely. You can get me. It's really simple. It's just Sophie Rhone. That's my handle on Twitter. I don't have anything exciting, but yeah, you can reach out to me on there if anyone has any questions. Wants to collaborate. See, there we go. You can leave that in. I think that's fine. Yeah. So yeah, hopefully I will kind of speak to you guys soon as well.
Yeah, lovely to chat to you. Thank you so much.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks,
Bye.
Sophie. Bye.
See you later. Bye.